Hello and welcome back to GoodKnit Kisses. I'm your host Kristen, and today we're going to learn how to make a Picot shawl. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to GoodKnit Kisses. I'm your host Kristen, and today we are going to work on the Picot triangle shawl pattern. And this pattern is on the GoodKnit Kisses blog, seen right here, and you can get the pattern in full. And it has also been featured on the knittingboard.com. This is actually their knittingboardchat.com page where they have a free pattern Friday, which is kind of fun. So here's the pattern again there as well. Be sure and check this blog out for other fun patterns every Friday and also throughout each month. So we are going to work on this now. If you need further help with the cast on or bind off, there's separate videos for that. So I'm going to attempt to cover some of that today. So this is going to be a triangle design, and it's going to resemble, this is actually a mitered square that I have that is a similar pattern, but basically it's about half of this. And the mitered square pattern doesn't have a picot, but you could change it. And I have it to where there's a pattern where you can add the picots afterward, or you could actually start this triangle shawl without the picots and just do a regular cable cast on and not have any picots at all and get a triangle shawl out of this. So with or without picots you could do that, but this pattern is going to be pretty extensive in the picots, and that's probably the most well, that is the most difficult part about the pattern. So it just requires more patience than others, but it's well worth the result in the end. This pattern was originally inspired by a hexagon blanket from Charity Wyndham, and we talked about combining these. So this would be a collaborative effort from Charity Wyndham and myself. The shawl is a pretty generous size, and it goes up to 76 inches wide. The cast on edge is 53 inches, and it can be made smaller. Now this is made on the knitting board loom with that's 28 inches with the peg extenders, so it's a very large loom. It is a 7/16 inch gauge, so it's a little bit bigger than your 3/8 gauge if you're familiar with the other one. You can use this on other looms just as long as you can get 165 to 168 pegs. You'll see why. If you have 165, you can do it, but it's a little easier if you have 168 at least. And you'll need 800 yards of medium worsted weight yarn. I've used the Red Heart Boutique Unforgettable, and I've used 3 balls of it in the sample. The finished weight was just about 10 ounces. So we've got all of our abbreviations and everything on here. I'm referring to the video for just the cast on. If you need help with that, we're going to go over a little bit on it. And then this main pattern, if you watch the video for the hexagon, this wedge shape is going to help you get your shape. But the main part of this pattern is going to concentrate on all the picot edging, because we're going to have a cast on, and then we're going to have like this side edge that goes on, and I'll show you with my sample here. This is a if I flip this in half, I'm just trying to make this easier to look at, but you're basically casting on, and then you've got the side edges of picots that are added on, and then you have your bind off later on. So that's what you're actually going to be working on. So these side edge picots are something that's going to be added on every other row. This is also a technique that you can use on other projects to carry over. So let's get started. Okay, we're going to take our board, and I've got the long rails on this side, and I'm going to start on the end here, and then I've got a long rail on this side, and so it's all in a complete rectangle at the fullest extent. We're going to make our slip knot whatever way you like, and we're going to do a chain cast on for 3. So I'm going to stick my hook in the back here and wrap around this first peg, pull it through, wrap around and pull it through, And whoops, and so I'm just doing 3. Now the exception to this cast on is only this first set here. It's cast on 3, bind off 2, and all the other ones are going to be a cast on 4, and you'll see why in a minute. So now that we've done this, we're going to put down our hook. This is an F5 hook. And so now we're going to bind off 2. We're going to knit over this first one, snug that up, knit over the second, move the second over, knit that off and snug it up, move it over. And this is a faster video, so like I said, if you want to go to the other cast on video, you're more than welcome to do that. And now we're going to knit over this last stitch here, move it over, work that stitch. If you need to pull on this string back here to keep the picot in the back, go ahead. Okay, so now we have got one little picot in the back here. Okay, and probably could have snugged that up just a little bit more, but this is just to get us started. And this is going to be an abbreviated version. The rest of the video, I've already got it to where it's in its full form. Okay, so we're going to put this back onto our hook. This is going to actually be my first, sorry, let me get in the frame. This is actually going to be my first peg. And I'm going to go around the back of it. And we're doing this because we need this extra amount of yarn on here. And this first one is going to be a little bit of a harder time to do it. So I'm going to put my tail out here, and when I pull this through, I should be able to kind of use 2 hands, and yeah, got a little bit more leverage here. So I pulled out here and I was pulling on here, which allowed this picot to stay in the back. And if you don't get this the first time, please don't get mad or upset. It's taken me a while to kind of get this cast on down, and so I make it look simpler, but if you look at my other video, it does go quite a bit slower, and you see me kind of struggle a little bit. So okay, so this does not count as your cast on now, but we are going to cast on 4. Okay, so we just had to get this one back on the loom. So now we're going to wrap around and cast on 1, 2, 3, and whoops, and then now this is 4, and you just slip that back on. Okay, now we're going to put this hook down, and now we're going to do what will be repeated the entire way around. Knit that first peg, knit the second peg, move the second to the first, work it, move it, snug it up, knit the second stitch, move it, work it, snug it up, move it over and snug it up again. Okay, so you're done with the second one. See, that was much faster. Okay, so what you notice is there's going to be a picot back here, and then you're skipping one, and then there's a picot back here. So every other one is not going to have that picot behind it. In the end, it will look like the picot is actually between the 2 stitches. So for every two pegs, you're going to have a picot in between, and at the end, you're going to land on number 165, which is 1, 2, 3. It's the 4th one over. So you're going to put a marker right here, and you're going to stop right there. And you'll see that I've got a couple extra markers on the end, and I'll explain why later on. And you probably want a movable marker for the main body of the pattern, but these other markers are going to be for the picot edge. So continue with the bind off 4, the cast on 4 and bind off 2 all the way around until you get to 165. I'll meet you in a minute. I've come to the end of my row, and I'm headed in this direction here, and you can do this in either direction, from left or from right. My last peg is the blue one. The actual first peg of the this shawl starts on peg number 1 over here. Now you can use this edge on any part. This shawl happens to be done on the bias. It's actually, this was the cast on edge and I worked it in a wedge just like the hexagon blanket, but I did a cast on in the Picot, and now I'm doing edging, and then when I bind off I'll do a bind off edging. So for the edge you're going to take your end peg, which is marked with blue, and we want to wrap around from the back, and we're going to do a cast on, a cable cast on. So we're going to pull down the working strand just like this and make a loop, and then twist it back and place it on the next peg, and then pull the working strand towards the back. And now you have one strand in the front on this one, and then one strand in the front and one strand on the back. And make sure and pull this working strand to the back. Now that you're on the back, you're going to wrap around from the back on the new last peg. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull down on the working strand, making a loop and flipping it. Okay, and then take your working strand towards the middle of these last two, and now you've got the working strand in between the two. Come around one more time, another cable cast on. So we're doing 3 cable cast ons. Twist it, place it, and this yarn I'm working with today is the Red Heart Unforgettable in the color Petunia. Okay, now that we have casted on 3, we're going to knit 1. So we're going to knit this last stitch. Knit that over. I'm just going to pull this as tight as I can to tighten that up. And now we're going to knit the stitch next to it because we're going to bind off. So when we bind off one, we always, on the first series of bind offs, we knit this first stitch and then we knit the next one. Move that one over and then knit or work that stitch and keep pulling this taunt in the back. Move the loop over and pull that taunt. So now this is as tight as you can make it. Now we're going to knit this next stitch because we're binding that off. Move the loop over, work, pull that again, picking up this loop, moving it over. We've now bound off 2 loops. Now we're going to knit on this blue marked peg, move that over, and bind off this last stitch and move it over. And if you notice, I keep pulling this taunt in the back. And what we've done is we've created this little picot back here. So we've got this last peg here. Now notice we bound these off. We're actually going to skip. We're not going to do anything here because the working strand is coming from the back. Do you see that? So it's coming between these 2 pegs. So now we want to knit this next one, or you can purl it. I prefer to purl it because well, it's because of the pattern I'm working on, but also when I do my pattern cast on, my Picot cast on, I always do a purl row after. It helps from getting the picots, they stand up better instead of flipping. I've done some socks before, and the trick is to put a purl row next to it, otherwise they curl and flip and it doesn't look as pretty. So I'm going to continue on this row, and then when I come back on this row, I'm going to be doing another cast on. So it's every other row, or you can do it every 4 rows. I would do a gauge, a swatch to get your gauge and find out how often you want to place those picots. It's completely up to you. Now the pattern I'm doing, like I said, is it's got that wedge by Charity, but she and I worked together in developing this one. So now I'm going to do a half hitch here. This section is describing what to do when you come to the end of your row to the end peg. You're E-wrapping, and you're going to continue till you get to the last peg, which we've marked with the blue stitch marker. Go ahead and work that stitch there. So now you've locked that in, and you can leave these stitches alone until you're ready to work them after we add on our edging. We're going to cable cast on by wrapping this last stitch again. We're going to pull the knit stitch down, and instead of pulling it off like a regular knit stitch, we're going to flip it and put it on the next peg that we've got marked with this little kind of peach looking stitch marker here. Now we've cast it on one in a cable. We're going to do that 2 more times. Flip it, place it, and put this strand, the working strand, to the back. Wrap around the last peg, pull down on the working strand to make a loop, flip it, and place it. And then move your working strand to the back and continue making this taunt in the back here. Now that we've cast it on, we're going to knit the last stitch, pull that taunt, knit the second stitch, move the second stitch over to the last stitch, pull it and work it, and move it over. And that is the first bind off. We're going to bind off again. Knit the second to last stitch, move it to the last, work it, move it, pull it taut, knit the second to last stitch, which is at the blue marker, move it, work it, and then pick it up and move it again, pull it taut. You should have a picot at the back, and then we're going to skip this one because the working strand is at the end. Knit this second to last stitch here. Just go ahead and work that E-wrap that's there. And now we're going to purl. The purl is for this next row. We're always going to purl next to a picot when we do an edge. So now that we've locked this in, you can see that we have got picots on the end here. Okay, if you want to use this in another pattern, I would suggest separating these a little bit more. I've got them nice and flush to each other because I thought it looked really cute all billowed together. If you want to do a chain cast on instead of a cable cast on, the stitches will look a little less sharp tooth, and they'll have more of a bump on the end. I did it here to show you that they're a little bulkier. Some of them have this sort of rounded edge. I wanted to show you the difference on them. I prefer the cable cast on. So when you're working into this row here, you're going to work back to the end of where your last stitch is that doesn't have a half hitch on it. So right now I'm actually at the end here when I'm showing you this part of the video. So I'm going to knit over all of these, but actually what I like to do is give myself a mental break, and I like to find where the half hitch is. So right here I can see that this one is where it doesn't look like a regular E-wrap. Like these are all coming from the back here, and this one looks a little odd. So that's the half hitch. So I'm going to go to the one right next to it, and I'll go ahead and knit that stitch over. So when I have a whole 165 pegs going on, I don't get in a hurry and start knitting over all these half hitches. So for this particular row, I only have a couple left. So I'm going to knit these over, and as I go this direction, I'm going to purl. Okay, so we're going to purl all the way until the point, like if I had knitted those over, this last one here that I had already knitted over, that one is the one that would have been my little block to know where to stop. So now I have purled, lock that in. Now this is where our new half hitch is going to be. We're going to wrap around the front side. So see, right around the front between the last half hitch and what that's going to be the new one, and leave that there. So now you have 2 stitches here. Now you're going to come around the back, and if you want, you could go ahead and knit that over and give you that little stopping place and continue in an E-wrap to the end of your row. So you're going to work all the way down and around and back depending upon what you are, and it progressively gets shorter and shorter, and it gets faster and faster. All the rows are going to get shorter and shorter, faster and faster. Continue on your pattern, and we'll meet back up at the end. Alright, we're coming to our last row. I've just done a bind off, and I have this last purl, the second to last peg, and I'm going to make my half hitch and then do my very last E-wrap. Okay, so all of the pegs except for the last one are all going to have 2 stitches on them. Okay, so we're going to cable cast on, do 3 of them, just like all the other edges. And now we're going to bind off by knitting the first stitch, doing just as we've done it this whole time on the edging. The initial cast on edge in this pattern and the edging, the side edging, and the bind off picots are all slightly different from each other, just because of the way that they need to face and move and everything. So you have to kind of pay attention to the notes there. All right, we've done our last picot on this end. Okay. Okay, we've come to the end. I did one more half hitch on this second to last stitch, and I had E-wrapped and knitted this over, and so I had a half hitch and then this E-wrap here. Now we're at the bind off section of taking it off of the loom, and for this particular project we're going to do it a little bit differently. It's the way that the picot's all set up and these half hitch stitches and everything, so it's not going to look like my regular picot bind off. We're going to cast on, cable cast on 3 stitches just how we do on the edging, but we're going to bind off 4. So do your cable, knit and flip, wrap around, knit and flip, place the marker, or place the stitch I should say, and knit, flip and place. Okay, so now we've got all 3 of them on there. Same thing as before. I'm going to knit this, pull it taut, move it over. And I will say that this particular yarn is a little grabby. Oh, I did this wrong. I'm going to show you me fixing it. You want to knit this stitch here. I'm sorry. Knit this one here. And while I was telling you about what it does, this one's a little grabby, so we want to make sure and do the steps correctly, because if you have to frog it, this roving type yarn tends to want to grab onto itself, and it's hard to frog when you're doing all these picots. So I'll run a couple of these with you again, but we're doing the same thing that we did before, but once we get to this last peg here where the blue marker is, we're actually going to bind that off. Okay. Knit that over and move it. Okay, and one more time. And now we're going to actually knit these 2 stitches together. So you have the half hitch stitch that was on top, and pull that over. Okay, so that's knit 2 together, move the stitch over, work it, and move it. And this is going to be your tip of your shawl, the tip of the triangle. Okay, so now we're going to just be casting on 3 and binding off 4. You can remove one of these markers if it helps to take the blue off. You can do that. And so what will happen is, once you bind these off again, you're going to have this one empty, and you can just keep moving the last stitch marker down, and so that way you're not moving all 3 at the same time. So we want to cast on 3 and fill up where these stitch markers are, flip it and place it, and you can see where I've frogged it recently. We had some technical difficulty on the video, and I thought it recorded everything. So I'm sorry if the lighting may even look slightly different. Okay, so we are going to knit this last stitch as usual, knit the second to last stitch, move it, work it, move that stitch, knit, move, work, move, knit, move, work, and move. Okay. And then we're going to knit these two together, move it, work it, and move it. Okay, and so now we have 2 picots on the back here, 1, 2, and we have an empty peg and then 3 stitch marker pegs that are empty. Just take the last one and move it over to the empty peg. Okay, so we'll just be shuffling these down as we go. Alright, so we're going to cast on 3 again. Alright, so we cast 1, 2, 3. Knit. Work it. Move it. Knit. Work it and move it. Knit. Work it. Move it. And knit 2 together. Move it. Work it. And move it. Okay. You've got 3 picots. And move your stitch marker. Okay. If you do have to pick up your project and you don't want to lose your stitch markers, what you could do is go ahead and cast on these pegs here. Okay. Cast on the ones with the stitch marker, and then you'll know what place you left off. So on the large shawl like this, you might not do the whole bind off in one session, especially if you've got a full household going on. So I suggest going ahead and casting on these 3 and leaving the stitch markers here, unless you're writing them on the ends, but because they're progressively moving, there's just not really a good way to do that. So cast these 3 on and then leave it for the next time, and then you'll know where you are. Then you'll just start the bind off process. So this is how it's looking. Just continue the same way, and then go all the way till the end, and when you get to the last one, you're going to just pull it through and make your last picot, pull it through, and weave in your ends, and you are done. So great job, and we'll see you back at the end. Alright, we've come to the end of our bind off section. We've got 2 pegs left, and I've casted on 3. And I just wanted to run this on here for you to see. So we're going to bind these off. Remember, we're binding 4 off, and this last one over here, and knit this last that has the last 2 half hitches on it. Okay, and there we go. We have got that last one on. Now see, if you pull this off here, you can see that you have a picot here and a picot here, and we're just going to do one more stitch, and now we're going to pull this through. And if you want to check your work and see what the type of yarn you have on, you can pull this to see this is what it's going to finish like. If you think you want to add another picot, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to go ahead and make the decision to leave it off. So I'm going to pull out my tail. I'm going to cut that. pull my tail here. And then all we're going to do is weave in our ends. This is from my original cast on for the Picot side, and I'm going to tuck this here because this is actually the bottom of a Picot, and it's going to weave into the base here, and then I can weave this in as well. So what I'll do is I'll hook this through. Let me grab a crochet hook and show you here in a moment. Alright, so I've moved my loom away, and I've just got a crochet hook that's appropriate for our yarn. I'm making it actually a little bit bigger to exaggerate today. But see how this yarn, because it's so multicolored, it really depends upon what the yarn color is as to where you're going to weave it. So we're going to end up attaching this and then weaving it back through this pink side. And then this one's actually just going to weave back in through the purple side because that's really the only way to mask it. So I'm going to stick my crochet hook through 2 of these loops here, and we're going to pull through this Picot here, make a loop, and then pull through one more time, and then you can tighten that up. Okay, so that Picot is not going anywhere. It's now secured into the base, and then I'm just going to flip it back this direction and start weaving it through. So weave it through there, and then I like to go through another opposite stitch going the opposite way, going through a purl bump. And then go through another bump going the other direction. And after you get a couple of inches in, you can go the opposite direction. And so go about a couple of inches in, and then when you get down that way, you're going to weave in the opposite direction, and so then that way your end won't come out. Oops. Okay, and now I'm going to pull this back this way, and you want to go back in through some of the same stitches and pull in between and get that nice and secure. Okay, so you want to continue weaving that in. Now this side, you can weave this in and cut this off. On this side here, you can go in through the purple and pull it through. Oops, having a hard time seeing it with this yarn today. Okay, so it's just going to weave back through this purple area, and then when you've got a few inches in, I'd say like 3 or 4 inches, once you get that woven in there and through some stitches, then you're just going to take your scissors and you're going to clip those off. And so you've got your nice end here, and I will pull this out and you will see, we'll show you a picture of this beautiful triangle shawl. Well, here we have the finished piece. This has actually just been pulled off the loom and it's not been blocked, and I wanted to lay it out on the floor so you could really get a feel for it. I'll have some pictures flip across with it on the mannequin so you can see it with a little bit better color. And it's 76 inches from the longest length on tip to tip, and 53 inches on the cast on side. So it can make a very large shawl, or you could even make the hexagon blanket, because this is basically one wedge from the hexagon blanket, but we've done it with Picot cast-ons and the edging and the bind-off. So I hope you enjoyed this shawl pattern. Thanks for tuning in to GoodKnitKisses. Have a great day and happy looming. Bye-bye.